Oh my days, it's Monday night and it's Dan Lewis on the Bywire. Hit it up. It is what it is. You know what it is. Come on now. It's 9 p.m. and that's when we bring you the latest in independent media and a little bit of something else. This week, we have got 4 shows for you. So make sure you've got your evenings absolutely free from 9 p.m. because it's going to be a vibe. And trust me, I've got a couple of special guests in this week. I say a couple. Every show is a special guest this week, man. And next week, again, Monday to Thursday, it is 9 p.m. on the Bywire with your boy Dan Lewis. So make sure next week's schedule is clear as well. Now, I hope you guys have been good. I hope you've been enjoying the weather. If you're outside of the UK, I don't know what the weather's like because I've been too tired to even look at what's going on. So today, when I got down and I had a look at the news, oh my days, we've got world leaders here in the UK. You've got Peruvian elections going on down in the Latin America. It's popping off. But like, there's so much going on right now. And when I turned on BBC News earlier, what was they talking about? Nothing really, nothing. That's why you guys tune into On the Bywire. Now, obviously, I got to do my little shout outs for myself, obviously. So hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the follow button, hit the retweet, hit everything you can so that everyone knows about On the Bywire. And also make sure you check out bywire.news where you can get the latest independent media news from our hundreds of millions of partners. I might have exaggerated slightly on the millions, but yeah, we got loads of partners all over the gaff doing all kinds of vlogs, podcasts, videos, articles, investigative journalism. It is all there and it is all for you. And what's better when it can be owned by you? That's where you come in. You got to make sure you hit up that donate button, become a member, become a subscriber, whatever it is, because independent media is nothing without the people. The people power the media, and then we can get rid of those few guys sitting there in their little mansions, big mansions, massive mansions. Yeah, get angry. Their mansions on their islands in the middle of nowhere, paying no taxes, and we can stop their narrative going through. Talking the narratives actually in the media, wait till you hear what we've got coming up with Abla Kan today. She is coming over from the Mydylarama podcast and speaking to us about some of her top picks from today's independent media. And also we have the final part of the James Schneider interview. That, oh my days, he gave us the gift that keeps on giving, man. We had a deep talk about how we win the media, talking about building our own narratives, building our own stories, and also talking of today about funding the media, which again reminds me, make sure you donate, because without you guys, we ain't nothing. On a real though, definitely, like James he brought a whole new vibe. He gave us so much to talk about, and I'm really excited to be playing the last bit in that. And as I said before, that'll be available for you to rewatch on our Facebook, on our YouTube. And what we'll try and do is we'll put the whole thing together in one nice long one. So if you've got a little car journey or a train journey coming up anytime soon, you can flick that on, sit down and listen to the cool, calm tones of James Schneider talking about the media. Now, someone who is definitely not tuned in is my dad, because he's calling me. I'm going to button that before them vibrations get on my nerves and just cover a couple of the things that have come up today. Now, some of the things that what I like to do is just highlight to you what you can get from independent media. Now, by hitting up bywire.news, some of the top stories we've got going on. Over in Nigeria, we've got broadcasters being told not to use Twitter to gather information. Obviously, they got some beef with the president over there. Twitter's just making moves with world leaders at the moment, you know what I mean? And over in the White House, they're talking about whether the Putin meeting is a reward or not. Now, I find it amazing that the media, mainstream media, set these storylines about Putin and the White House and number 10, and they make out like, we're the good guys, we're the bad guys, when they're all really just bad guys. Do you know what I mean? I just hate that stuff, man. So, that's going on over there. And one of my top picks from this weekend, another story, we shared it on our socials earlier, is the Tory MP who compared the Black Lives Matter kneel that footballers do at the beginning of their games to the salute that was done by the Nazis in Hitler's Germany. And it's amazing when you're talking about actually removing something that has caused death and you compare it to something that wants more death. What is the world coming to when these people are in charge of our taxes and in charge of our government and our schools? These are the kind of people that people are voting in, man. Something needs to be done when the media support these people. Boy, it's a crazy old world. Make sure you hit up bywire.news to get all the details on all of those stories and a lot more. Now, let's get straight into it. I want to hear that last bit from James Schneider. I know you guys can't wait to hear from him. So here it is, James Schneider on how we win the media. And what are your views on basically people paying for media and the fact that there is so much other mainstream media that is basically free to a lot of people? You know, is there a need to change the narrative around how people actually access media, independent media, and whether there should be a cost behind it?
So I'm in general not a fan of paywalls because you're trying to reach the maximum number of people that you can, but this stuff is expensive and needs to be paid for. So one is, yes, the crowdfunding, the audience giving freely what they can and what they want to give, and that is an important thing. And people should, if they can afford it, they should support these institutions, and that's one thing. The second is how we can get collective institutions to support them more. So how can we get the ones that we're part of, trade unions, maybe Momentum, other organizations that we're part of, how can we get those to support independent media, either like with material support or in kind support? And I think that's very important. I mean, if you look back to 45 years ago, the most read newspaper in the world was the Daily Mirror, you had, which was straightforwardly Labour supporting. You had a very, very different media ecosystem. The TUC owned the paper that came before the Sun. There's a long history of progressive organisations being a kind of democratic weight within the media, a kind of guarantee of support. So I think working within our organisations, pushing this agenda within our trade unions, within Momentum, the Labour Party, whoever we are part of, to push them in that direction. And the third thing, which is a less short-term thing, but we could only really do with a Labour government. But we should be pushing for these policies now, and we should be pushing them through the party. Things like a windfall tax on the tech giants in order to catalyse a public interest journalism fund, which can be run, democratically at arm's length, completely at arm's length from the government. And we should be looking at those sorts of policies as well, which will change the media landscape in the future. Because the point of getting a Labour government elected is twofold. First, it's to make people's lives better now and to do everything it can to do that. And then the second point is to shift the terrain, so in a more progressive direction, so that progressive forces, progressive actors are able to carry on that change in society. So you'd have to change the media landscape. It's the same thing as freeing trade unions up. It's about changing the ground on which struggle operates on.
Yeah, fantastic. I think the one thing that you missed out was that if you're not already, subscribe to this channel right now. Yeah. Hit the follow button, the like button, whatever platform you're watching on. You know what to do, because you want to know when we're going to be on air next time. But yeah, it is about just those little things as well, making sure that people are supporting independent media in the little ways, the little clicks, the little follows, the little shares. We love them, and it means we can make way more content. Now, James, I've used up a lot of your time, and you've given us a lot of insight. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak to us today.
No problem at all.
There's a lot to learn from, a lot to take in and have a think about, and for ourselves at Bywire and the Rebel Citizen, we plan to continue really pushing the idea that the media can be different. It doesn't have to be what a very few rich people decide they want you to know. We believe that people can own the media. And we hope that you'll join us on that journey, James. Well, I'm sure you will.
100%. You're doing exactly what my one of my favorite quotes is, which is from Jello Biafra, the US American punk musician, who says, "Don't hate the media, be the media."
Easy now, come on. Don't hate the ting, run the ting, my don. There you go, man. Just switched it up. But yeah, that's where it is. James Schneider. I'm Dan. And this is Bywire, the Rebel Citizen. Thank you very much. Boom. And that is the last part in the James Schneider interview. James, just an all-round cool guy. Thank you so much, James. If you check out, he shared a couple of clips, I think, on his Twitter as well from the interview. So like I said, that'll be online for you guys to watch back. And yeah, basically, if you don't like it, take over the ting, run the ting, man. That's the motto out here, and that's what we do on the Bywire. All of Bywire. We don't like the way it's working, so we do it ourselves. And I love that vibe. I love that energy. Now let's get straight over to our special guest this evening. It's Abla Kan, who is a journalist and film programmer. She currently curates a film show on BBC Arabic and edits magazine Mydylarama, co-hosting its podcast, which focuses on race and socio-economic issues in film. Abla, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate you coming through. And you're all the way in France right now, right?
I am. I managed to cross the border.
Easy, come on. It's not on red alert out there, is it?
No, but those test companies are making a mint out of people like me traveling.
Is it? Do you
yeah, maybe that's something else that should be covered. Sorry?
Do you have to pay to get the test to go abroad then, do you?
Yes, but more specifically in the UK, the same tests are free in France. And in the UK, they're a complete racket. Completely deregulated market, all competing against each other, and you have to hunt on the web to try and find good deals on those specific tests. So it's really like a bit of a pyramid scheme, to be honest.
What?
Yeah.
What? That's a whole. I didn't even see. Do you know what? Like, I've literally just sat here in my kitchen. For the last year and a half. Like,
I mean, to be fair, that's what you're meant to do.
yeah. I've had like two trips when I could to go a little bit further away. The last time I went on a distance was like Bristol in March last year, actually. Yes. So I don't know what it's like out there. People are like, they're having to go work and all this stuff, and I'm just hiding away, and that's crazy. That's the thing. Man.
I think there's not been too much of a pushback, because if you've got the money to travel, you've probably got the money to pay for that test. Chances are you're traveling for work or leisure, not really out of necessity. So I think they're kind of banking on that people just won't really complain. But it is a pretty penny. It's quite expensive.
Oh my days. Well, rather you than me, homie.
I had to come.
Fair enough. That's absolutely fine. Now, today, as per usual, we have got a few of today's independent media stories that we're going to have a look at. The first one, we've got a little video from Real Media. I've got to do a shout out because, like, I swear, Real Media is like one or two people who just travel all around the UK with their little camera and cover everything, right?
Well, actually, let me do a shout out as well. If you want to know more about Real Media, check out the IMA Talks podcast, which is the official podcast of the Independent Media Association. And I hosted an episode with Sean Day from Real Media, from Real News, who talks about their work. And they've been going for years, and they do really, really excellent work, and it's quite unique. They basically it's broadcasting journalism, and they film protests. They report, it's industrial reporting. They film actual protest movements. They really go in there and film the crowds and so on. So it's really, really good. And that's a good example of what they do.
Real News. Yes. But I got that wrong. Apologies to Real Media. It's Real News.
There is Real Media.
Yeah. And then there's a Real Media in America. Let's not get into that. But yeah, I remember I think it was Sean turned up. We were outside a hospital in South Ribble or Chorley. And Sean just turned up out of the blue and was like, "What's going on, man?" And he filmed it and he got it on that's a work rate, man. But anyway, let me play this clip quickly and you can tell us a little bit more about what's going on here.
Sure.
Support victimized reps! Support victimized reps! Support victimized reps! Support victimised reps! Support victimised reps!
What's disgusting? Union busting! What's disgusting?
Union busting!
What's disgusting?
Union busting!
Lots of reps have stood up.
So there we go. We see the crowd outside. Is it a school or a university there?
It's a school. So what happened is the piece of news there is that Kirsty Payton, who's a teacher and a rep with the National Education Union, won a dismissal case against an educational group called United Learning. Now, what happened was Kirsty Payton faced disciplinary proceedings by United Learning when she posted on Facebook back in December 2020 about the lack of safety in schools around the way these schools were administering the lateral flow tests, those specific COVID tests. So she posted on the NEU Inner London Executive Facebook page. The post was really critical of the Department for Education's policy and United Learning's pilot scheme, which saw them ask the staff at the school to administer these tests. And it was meant, the way they administered these tests was basically meant as a way to replace self-isolation protocols in these schools. So it was kind of to cut corners and make people work. So aside from the fact that she's perfectly legally entitled to voice that opinion, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency informed the government in January 2021 that this particular use of those tests was not authorized for these purposes. They are not trustworthy. Now, Real News, I urge people to watch that video because they interview experts in the field, public health experts and so on, who describe why this is such an unsafe project, and it puts teachers' health at risks and pupils' health and everyone else's health at risks, really, all in the name of maximizing profit, essentially. Now, the main issue there is her right to speak out as a union rep and the teachers supporting her and so on. Now, she won the case and she's going back to school, so that's brilliant. Why I'm also particularly interested in this case is because, unsurprisingly, United Learning is an academy trust, and I have a bit of a bugbear with academies, and I think there is just not enough done on that subject, and I think it's absolutely appalling. There's a very good campaign group, which is, I think, called the Anti-Academization Alliance, I think. I'm happy to send a link through, and they've got a lot of good resources, but many people seem to be a bit clueless about what that process is. And just kind of give a brief summary, it goes back to 2002 when a think tank called Policy Exchange, which was founded by none other than ex-education minister Michael Gove. He basically set up this scheme whereby private trusts buy up state schools. Right. And very explicitly in the definition of an academy, it says that the whole point is to look for free, and I quote, free market solutions to education. So at no point is it putting itself forward as a non-profit solution. It's essentially putting profit before education, and it's in a way to usher in privatization of full education. And there have been non-stop scandals since then. Teachers have raised alarms from anything from the completely overinflated pay of senior executive to the fact that some teachers just they were hiring their mates, basically. Some people just weren't trained to teach the subject. There was so little accountability, such a huge turnover. So the problem with that is that once you, a bit like privatizing anything, once you start that process, it's quite hard to roll it back. Yeah. So I do think that should also be highlighted. But in terms of that particular piece of news, it was very much her case that was at the heart of it. So well done to Kirsty Payton.
Yeah, definitely taking on the man and just defeating the man. 100%. I'm down with that. Also, just on the point of academization, I just find it amazing that, you know, like there's all these and I used it as an example locally where I live, just because like you make it sound like someone who's very good, you know, some business who have a lot of money is going to come and take over the school and they're going to spend loads of money. It doesn't mean that they're going to spend the money on the right things.
Well, that's it.
let's say McDonald's decides to buy a couple of schools.
Yeah.
They're going to spend it on literally
each.
teaching. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So why should someone, just because they might have a good education and they've got some money, does not mean that they should have the right to buy schools and basically have our children's futures in their hands. That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Now, from one protest to another, we're going over to Yorkshire, is it? Protesters raised their voice against mega prisons in a historic demo in Yorkshire. This one's from the Canary. Make sure you guys go check it out. Like historic protests. I love it. What's awesome with that as well is like today is a year since the Edward Colston statue got torn down and thrown into the water in Bristol. Big up the Bristol man, them and gal them, don't know. But like, so a year later, what's happening here in the UK? People are still protesting against the problems. Tell us more about this, though.
Yeah, so it's kind of a double-pronged protest, really, and I'm very interested in both causes. So the first thing the protesters are angry about is the treatment of 2 inmates of colour at HMP Full Sutton in Yorkshire. So they've both been victims of racist attacks, and they've been which have been handled terribly by the prison. So the 2 men are Kevan Thakrar, hope I'm not butchering their names, and Dwayne Fulgence. So Thakrar, for example, has been imprisoned for more than 13 years. 11 of these years, he spent them in something called a closed supervision centre, which is a particularly brutal form of incarceration, only because he defended himself against racist attacks by prison guards. So a number of human rights organizations have raised this issue, and the protesters are very angry about the treatment of both men. The other thing that they're protesting about, which kind of goes along with that whole ethos, is really the building of a what so-called mega prison on that very site. So that's linked back to state plans to create more than 10,000 new prison places nationally, and that's going back to a governmental plan that was called the Prison Estates Transformation Programme. And who was involved? None other than Michael Gove again, who seems to pop up.
My guy's about, he's doing bits.
Well, lined up to maybe be prime minister as well. And 1,400 of those spaces are meant to be built at Full Sutton Prison. So there's a really good, another plug for independent media. Corporate Watch has a very good investigative report on that programme. And they also point out that the UK is currently the most incarcerated nation in Western Europe. And it's a business. The more prison places you build, the more you're going to fill them. That's the idea.
Exactly.
And there's a horrible echo to the prison industrial complex of the US, where it's kind of embedded in the way the country is run, where you incarcerate black men essentially to provide cheap labour. So that's the worry there. And I actually picked up on the way these prisons are essentially private as well. So companies like G4S and Serco make lots of money by building them, and development companies. And so it's a money-making scheme, let's be honest. And the way the Mirror has covered this story is that the UK is basically saying the UK is introducing these new, quite nice-looking prisons that look like hotels. And they're essentially built with no bars on the windows to help rehabilitate prisoners. And so I thought that was quite interesting to point out how they framed it and how independent media's framed that.
I saw someone had shared that article actually on one of the socials, and it's hilarious because like you would think every day I feel more and more like I'm in that futuristic world that you saw in a movie in the 80s. Do you know what I mean? Oh, these prisons are good. Nah, just abolish the lot, get rid of them, and let's rework on everything in society. Like, let's start over again.
Well, there's no money in proper rehabilitation. There's money in building those prisons. That's where the issue lies, sadly.
That is it. What I love about this one is obviously like a lot of the time, people who have been inside, they've been in prison or have criminal records, they're very often, slandered by the press. They're they're just not accepted back into mainstream society, I suppose you could say. But there is a large growing amount of people who are showing solidarity with prisoners. Big up the prison solidarity movement. where you can become a pen pal with a prisoner and stuff. And I just think this fully displays true. So I love solidarity. You know what I mean? Proper working class solidarity. Like this is like the pits of it. It's like, yeah, you know what? They might have done something wrong, but you know what? They don't deserve to have it bad. They do your time and let's treat people properly. And I love that. And fully against obviously the mega prison vibe, especially when anything that Michael Gove's involved with.
He can avoid.
It's like, you know, if he opens a restaurant, I'm gonna be against it.
Yeah, there's something dodgy there.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's mad. Like, and also just to add on before we move on to the next one, like this government, not only are they spending money on prisons here in the UK, but they're obviously, we've seen people getting deported to get put in prison. They're building the prisons in other countries to then be able to send people who have never been to those countries into those prisons because they lost some paperwork. And
and then you open the door to all sorts of sort of black sites and places where regulations don't apply and so on.
That's it. Exactly. Now, talking of corruption and friends of Michael Gove, now is the Byline Times story of GB News, part owned by two conservative lords. Big up Byline Times. As always, we featured them, I think, once already last week. And GB News. Should we, instead of GB News, should we just call it the Tory channel? Like,
I mean, that's why there's absolutely no breaking story here. I expected that to be the case. In a way, fair play, because they're actually quite open about where their allegiances lie. So it's not like they're presenting themselves. They're not presenting themselves as a non-biased channel. They're presenting themselves as an alternative to what's out there. Now, I'd argue that it's not quite an alternative. Let's be honest. Most media outlets, mainstream media outlets, are pretty much owned by the same people, but there's maybe a more plurality in recruitment, whereas this is very much them and their mates. So I have, we just have to wait to see how successful it's going to be, how it probably will have a huge boost at first because of all the publicity, but will it sustain viewers? Let's not forget, it's a news channel. It's not going to have much outside of that. So if nothing else, at least the BBC has, I think, still excellent drama to kind of keep a loyal audience going, but they don't even have that to sell. So
yeah,
we'll have to wait and see and counter their efforts with a properly developed independent media sector.
I quite like the fact, like when you say that they're so open, and I suppose that's where we're at now, is that as well, a lot of politicians, they're not even bothered, or even just the big business people, they're not even bothered what they say, like, because they will just get away with it because they've got so many of their mates in power, in powerful positions, that it doesn't matter. And in the article there, it was saying about how they've even mentioned that they might campaign against MPs that vote against Brexit. And it's like, you're literally admitting to set up a TV channel with loads of money to campaign against political parties in a country where that's really really against the rules. Like you can't do that kind of stuff unless you're but then at the same time they'll be having a go at other countries, and let's not name any of them, to get into an argument, but they'll be having a go at other countries for their political media and stuff. What I mean?
Of course. And let's not forget the main issue I take with them is that they present themselves as an anti-establishment channel. You're not. That's many things.
No, you can't have that one.
Yeah,
you can't have that one. Now, talking about funding of independent or any media, obviously, I'm very interested. Been listening to the podcast and the work you do with. So you're looking at different. Actually, I was going to do my little explanation, but you explain your podcast and tell us how we can basically give you some money, support the thing and help you have your be working full time for your podcast.
Well, I have a few things to fund that I like to put out there.
Put them out there. Go on, do it all.
Trip to the Maldives that I've been
Stop off in France on the way. But yeah, tell us more about it.
So to try and keep it brief, it's quite a convoluted story, but basically Mydylarama was initially a magazine started 11 years ago now, and it was initially an academic magazine, I guess, which was focused on film theory, and it was started by a bunch of friends who were both academics, film academics, students, and social workers. And bit by bit, it sort of grew to cover mainly festivals. So I do a lot of work in film festivals, so I managed to get quite a lot of ins in that world, get access to festivals, get press passes, accreditation, interview filmmakers, and so on. And now really it's a magazine that mostly focuses on independent film and film, what we say, as a platform for oft ignored voices. So anything from short films to documentaries, to experimental films, to films just made by maybe campaign groups like Real Media and so on, like Real News, sorry. And the podcast was created, obviously, like everyone else who's created a podcast during the last year and a half. So really it's nearly a year old now. And it's hosted by myself and Socorro Green, who is an academic who's American, but lives in the UK and is doing a PhD in the UK. And she specializes, and she's extremely knowledgeable and extremely funny. So it's an absolute joy doing this with her. She specializes in issues of race and class, both in the UK and the US. She's very experienced, so she can talk a lot about this. So what we do is we pick a film or a series or genre, both film buffs, and we discuss the issues they bring up in terms of social issues they bring up, economy, poverty, race, and so on. And it can go quite far. I mean, we've talked about everything and anything, and then we bring in guests and chat to them as well. So, for example, last time we were really happy to have Anna Smith with us. And she was the president of the UK Film Critics Circle, and she's quite a well-known film critic in the UK. And she wanted to talk about women representation in films and in certain sexually charged films, film noir, neo-noir, and so on, and focus on promising young women. So we talked about that film and issues around that, and around consent and so on. So it's really good fun. And we got a little bit of money to buy some equipment. And we have a few partners as well across festivals. So our biggest partnership is with the Clermont-Ferrand Short Film Festival. So it's a huge, huge festival that's publicly funded in France. And they pay us every year to cover some of the festival in English and
Amazing.
work directly with them as well. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
That's brilliant. And in your latest one, you did mention as well, you have some of the work of, is it a Palestinian filmmaker that's available?
We publish articles regularly. You might be referring maybe to our latest short of the week. I think one of our writers flagged a short film by a Palestinian filmmaker who's got a film online that's free. So that's it. We try to find anything that might be put out there that might not get much publicity and we think is worth a look. Fantastic. So but it's still mainly run by mates. We none of us are business experts of any sort. So that's what we've mostly relied on, basically partnerships. And
what's the website or the social media link? Where do we need to go to find it?
So website is mydylarama.org.uk. All the handles are at mydylarama. I mean, Twitter handles at mydylarama. I think we mostly use Twitter. We've got a Facebook page called mydylarama, and we take in requests for discussions. Filmmakers can send us their films as well to review. We've had that a few times. And also we welcome new writers. So we're not particularly fussy. We're mostly fussy about the quality of writing, really, but in terms of length and approach and so on, we're quite open.
Fantastic. Well, do you know what? Like I said, I've made sure to catch up on a few of the episodes. It's definitely on my subscribe list now. It's something I'll definitely be listening into. So Abla, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it. I know it's getting dark there. You're obviously an hour or so ahead of us. So I'm going to let you go. You enjoy your evening, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon. If there's ever a time you want to come back on the show, hit me up, homie. I'm here. You know what I mean?
Love to. I'd love to. It's really great fun. I love Bywire, and thank you for all the support. It's
fantastic. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you so much, Abla.
Thanks, Dan.
Bye-bye. There you go. There you have it. That's Abla. We've had James Schneider. Tomorrow night we have got we've got Kenny from the Save Grassroots football campaign. He's going to be talking about his work. Actually, you know what? He dropped a couple of bombs. I recorded it earlier today, and he dropped a couple of bombs about the reality of where money goes in football and what we need to be doing to be getting money back to the young people, and the grassroots football, helping out communities and making sure that football is in the hands of communities. Also, we got a special guest. I'll wait for the socials to let that one release because I like to get the retweets and all of that. And before you guys go bed tonight, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button, the follow button, the share button, all of the buttons. Copy the link to your Facebook post. Make sure you film something on your Instagram story. Tag Bywire News. You know what it is. You know where to find me. I'll be here at 9 p.m. tomorrow. This is on the Bywire. I'm Dan Lewis, and you guys are awesome. Thank you very much.